This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
So tonight we're going to start off with Chapter 19, Matters of Tow, and the symbol is the Lion of Andor. Matters of Tow because this is mostly about Aviendha.
Yeah, we also see Mangan actually going to his death. We've got Leah before she gets lost in Shadar Logoth. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of Matters of Tow, but I do agree that Aviendha definitely gives us the most of that.
Mm-hmm. And we have him traveling back to Camelin. Mm-hmm. So this was a 2-chapter, really quick visit to
Cairhien.
And then he's popped right back to Camelin. So it was actually like he basically fled from
Alana.
Wow, I am having a little trouble with names tonight. Excuse me. He fled from Alana, sort of regrouped, and now he's heading back because he realizes he still has a bunch of shit to take care of in Camelin. He really shouldn't have left.
Yeah, he's skittering around very frantically at this point. This part of the series, these several chapters always feel like he's, water on a hot griddle, just bouncing around from city to city.
It's also setting up for the fact that when he disappears, people don't suspect right away, because he's just bouncing all over the place. Like, he's there, and then he's gone, and he's, telling his guards he doesn't want them around, and he's disappearing from them, and he's hiding from them.
And weeks!
Yeah. So, the whole thing is just absolutely setting up his kidnapping, and his just foolish behavior, and his irrationality, and his irregularity, and the way he's treating his followers, and how bad that is.
Yeah.
All right, I'll read us in, because I kind of like this.
Yeah.
Because he basically, it starts with a dream.
Mm-hmm.
A dream from Lewis Theron. By the way, every once in a while I see Tow, I think Toph from, again, names.
Is that the last Airbender or something?
The last Avatar, the last Airbender.
I know it from the memes, not from the real thing.
Yeah. But, so, I read this and I was like, Matters of Toph, I guess we're seeing an Earthbender.
I mean, he's kind of strong with Earth, more with fire.
I started drinking a little early, and then we talked for a long time, and so I went through a couple of beers while we were doing that.
Best keep going before I have to go get my third.
Rand thought that he would sleep well that night. He was nearly tired enough to forget Alana's touch, and more important, Aviendha was out in the tents with the Wise Ones, not undressing for bed with no regard for his presence, not disturbing his rest with the sound of her breathing. Something else made him toss, though. Dreams. He always warded his dreams to keep the Forsaken out, and the Wise Ones, but warding could not keep out what was already inside. Dreams came of huge white things like bird wings without the bird, sailing across the sky, of great cities of impossibly tall buildings, shining in the sun, with shapes like beetles and flattened water drops speeding along the streets. All Age of Legends stuff. Mm-hmm. He had seen all of that before, inside the huge ter'angreal in Ruidian, where he had gained the dragons on his arms. And he knew them for images of the Age of Legends. But this time it was all different. Everything seemed twisted, the colors wrong, as though something had gone askew in his eyes. The show wings faltered and fell, each carrying hundreds to death. Buildings shattered like glass. Cities burned. The land heaved like storm-tossed seas, and time after time he faced a beautiful, golden-haired woman, and watched love turn to terror on her face. Part of him knew her. Part of him wanted to save her from the Dark One, from any harm, from what he himself was about to do. So many parts of him, mind splintered in glistening shards, all screaming. That's a rough one.
You notice the colors are all askew? I think that's because it's a nightmare.
I think it's because it's the perspective of a man who's gone insane.
Well, right. But I think that that's related to why nightmares are... Why the ring that has the weird colors makes nightmares. I think that there's something there. Madness and nightmares and terror. The color balance is off. Certainly it's because he's mad. But it always makes me think of the ring that's all blue and gives nothing but nightmares.
Totally. No, I like that a lot. Colors and nightmare tied together.
Yeah, there's just something. Something's off.
So he wakes up. He's waking up in Cairhien.
Yeah.
With, actually, the breakfast sounds really good right now. Sweet berry tea and warm bread, butter and honey, and hot porridge.
But he doesn't eat it. This is the beginning of when he really stops sleeping and eating like a human being for, the rest of the series, pretty much.
He has the warder ability now. He doesn't really need sleep as much as normal people. He doesn't need... He's, pulling from the warder bond to sustain him. And that lets him sort of not eat and sleep as much as a normal human.
Yeah. But at the same time, it also really contributes to the stress that gives him normal madness, for lack of a better term.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. Like, it's not good for
He's
him.
hangry. real hangry for the whole rest of the series.
He's always hangry. Oh, Jesus. Hangry with a pain in his abdomen.
Yeah, and, like, just not eating much. Like, we really don't see a lot of him ever describing eating at this point, you know?
We see him walking away from food a lot.
Yeah, we see him avoiding food, and we see him occasionally drink wine. It's no wonder that he's going absolutely insane, even without the corruption on the power.
Rand, you're not you when you're hungry.
Right.
You're Lewis Theron.
Darth
Have a Snickers.
Rand. A Snickers will turn you into God Rand.
Veins of gold, we call that caramel.
Yeah, when the market deals come through, you can cut the checks to Fox and Raven Media. It's fine.
Thank you, Snickers. This episode funded by Snickers, brought to you by high fructose corn syrup.
Brought to you by bullshit subsidies.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I do love a good Snickers.
Like once a year.
Yeah.
After like Halloween, and it's like there's just Snickers goddamn everywhere. God, it was so awesome. When I worked at the library, they would have this little like dish of like tiny candies, and it got so dope after Halloween.
And so this next little section is a list of everybody and their mother. And I dug into it, and I was like, I have honestly nothing to say about these people at this point. Like, so some of them are going to be rebels, some of them are going to be loyal.
Yeah. I opened them all up on whatfandom.com. I opened up a page for all of them. And yeah, it's like they're just all these little... It's just a cluster.
Is there anyone in particular that caught your eye? Nothing... I mean, obviously we know, Colbrain...
Colbrain? Dobraver?
Thank you. Names are hard, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, those two are striking, and then Wyramon's in here, I think. No, Wyramon's not in here. He's one of the only ones who's not in here.
No, I didn't think so.
Yeah, the rest are all just meaningless rebel supporters, basically.
But I think it's just meant, like, there's a crowd of nobles, and I don't feel a need to dig into it any more than that.
It's hilarious. We're halfway through the book, and this feels like an intro passage right here. It's like, remember all these assholes? Yeah, they're still assholes.
Really is, hey, check in with Kaelin. You guys okay? Any problems? Okay, I gotta
Kyrian.
Man. Because basically, Kyrian's doing pretty well because it's under the auspices of Berlain and Ruark.
The only interesting thing about this cluster is that it reminds us that he sent a bunch of Tyran nobles to Kyrian to keep them out of trouble. And we're seeing in this cluster the fact that the Kyrian and Tyran nobles are starting to not integrate, but at least figure out how they hate the dragon in the same ways and to create alliances and clusterings based around fuck the dragon rather than their usual nationalistic animosities. But it's pretty plot-wise.
I gotta agree with you there, yeah.
They think it's important. We don't. We know it's not.
And pretty much it's just the last vestiges of the independence is these people are sort of subsumed into Rand's vision of what he wants. He's an emperor at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He's bale-firing, well, not yet, but he's soon to be bale-firing castles. Like, don't stand up to Rand. Like, I don't know. I think at this point everyone's just terrified of him.
Right, but some of them are more self-deluded about how effective they can be against him than others. Right, like Colaver. Like, these are the people who get approached by the embassy to say, when we create a power vacuum by kidnapping the dragon, how would you like to step into that power vacuum?
Right. That's what he's setting up, is sort of that group of people to step into the power vacuum.
These are the people that we see those quick little meetings with. This is why these are the people who Colaver thinks matters to plot against, right? She's here being like, how can I get over the dragon? And screw over all these other guys. Because what you're saying, right? Like, Rand is an emperor at this point. Nobody has the ability to stand up to him. When the Aes Sedai come, they see all these disaffected people that are just that little nudge from being confident enough. This is the list of people that they go through for that.
And you look at his attitude, he's saying Andor was the problem he had to deal with now. Andor and Samael. He's completely ignoring Kyrian. Mm-hmm. He's like, whatever, you guys, like, you're taken care of. I've fostered you off on someone who's Not really a ruler, but sort of a regent, and don't cause me any trouble.
Yeah. He thinks he can play them off of each other and just butter the cat's paws back and forth. And, they're smart. It only works for so long.
And that comes back to bite him in the ass when he gets kidnapped, because Colaver takes over the throne, and he has to do the whole breaking and reknitting of the throne and killing, basically stripping over titles and lands, and that point where she kills herself like that. All of that, again, this is all leading to the destruction of Rand's psyche, which is all let the Lord of Chaos rule, right? Let things go bad so that Rand, when he gets up on that mountain, decides not to give it another shot.
Yeah.
But a video came out recently on Reddit that said 5 misconceptions about the Wheel of Time, non-spoilers. And I was like, no, this is wrong. This is not correct. And so I came up with my own 5. And number 2 was the Dark One is not actually trying to kill Rand for most of the series. Throughout most of the series, in fact, other than like at the end of book 3, when Ishamael gets really pissed off at Rand and tries to kill him, and then Ishamael's gone, and no one's really trying to kill Rand in book 5 and 6. And then book 7, you cross the streams, and Moradin says, nobody kill him. And that pretty much holds through the rest of the series. So there's only a very brief period of time when the Forsaken are actively trying to kill Rand. And it's mostly when Ishamael is trying to get his, revenge for being burned alive. But for most of the rest of the series, they're under orders not to kill him, or Lanfear's there, protecting him. Misconception number 2. Well, part of the reason Rand survives is no one's trying to kill him.
Right. The only people trying to kill him are little piddly punks like these guys, who just stand no chance whatsoever.
At least the dark side is rarely trying to kill him. They're trying to convert him.
Yeah, the neutral people are a different kettle of fish entirely.
Do you want to hear the other 4?
Yes.
All right. Number 5. Slowing and agelessness are not the same thing. Number 4. A lot of the weirdness with the one power after the use of the Bowl of the Winds is due to the use of the Bowl of the Winds, not due to Rand's madness, even though he thinks it is. Number 3. Lanfear is Elsie Grinwall in the tower and sends the girls to Tanchico. Number 2, the Dark One's not trying to kill Rand most of the series. And number 1, Balefire does not destroy a soul for all time. It can be reborn. It just means the Dark One can't resurrect you. I
saw that when you were doing something on Twitter with that argument, and that was sort of melting my brain slightly.
That's what got me started, yeah. I did a quote from the companion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something that talking with you only recently has made me realize, actually. Oh, duh.
I want to do a PSA where I take a piece of thread and say, this is your thread on death, and cut it with scissors. This is your thread on Balefire, and burn it. Any questions?
We need to do this.
And then I'll be like, there's a thread in both situations. The thread gets cut, it gets burned back a little bit, but there's still a thread. It goes before and beyond the burning, and you can always weave it back into the pattern. It's just that the Dark One can't seize it at that moment because it burns back a little bit.
Oh my god, so I was listening to Wheel Takes the other day, and Allie of Wheel Takes she's never read the series. The second that Elsie wasn't pointed at warders, she was like, that's not Elsie. The scene where Elsie shows up and isn't headed towards the warder practice yard when Matt is going to beat the princes, she's like, something's wrong with my girl Elsie Grinwell. I know something's wrong. It's so beautiful.
And that's why I really like a woman's perspective on this, because I would have never picked up on it.
Right? Yeah. It's hilarious listening. Allie has some of the most amazing predictions. Tom and Moraine, first scene, they're gonna bang. What?
It makes me feel very justified when I see that after my 10th reread and be like, I think that's in there. After realizing that Tom and Moraine, we can go back and see evidence of that, and it was written in there. And to hear that someone picks it up on the first time is very gratifying.
Yeah, there's been some amazing intuitive leaps where it's like, I guess RJ's foreshadowing really was actually good enough. God damn it.
Mm-hmm. If you're reading carefully enough and slow enough and discussing every single chapter, you can pick up on a lot before it happens.
And and definitely perspectives other than a white dude reading a white dude's work. I feel like the most interesting insights often come the most easily to people that are not the same demographic profile as the author.
Are you saying...
Yes.
I'm screwed.
No, I'm not saying you're screwed. I'm just saying it's reading a man's work through a woman's eyes is a different angle, and it's fun.
No, that's why I'm happy to have you on the podcast, because
I try.
I don't know. You're not a straight white male.
I am not a straight white male. This is one of the many things I can be sure I am not. One of the few things I can be sure I am not. I don't know. First timers, women, people reading it at angles other than the narrative chronology, like the Grey Warder, doing topical stuff, getting all kinds of interesting stuff out of topical rather than chronological interpretations.
People have asked me, like, are you upset with all the podcasts out there? And I'm like, no, more is merrier. I can't keep up with them. Don't ask me to.
Yeah, way too much.
But like, I am super happy that the audience for this kind of stuff should be gigantic, and so I see no problem with coming up with different. Just don't do a chapter by chapter spoilers analysis. That's all I'm asking. Right? Like, just add something else to that.
Yeah, for sure. It's a delight. I love getting different people's perspectives because, 15 reads is not enough. You need 15 different perspectives.
On various different reads.
Yeah. Yeah, God. It's definitely there's not enough hours in the day sort of situation. We are tangenting hard.
The next thing I want to talk about is the Mangan hanging. So he pretty much walks away from that.
Yeah, honestly, rude.
You think?
Yeah. He pushes it out of his mind and forgets the date of his friend's ordained hanging and then gets reminded and still decides to hit snooze on the alarm.
How? See, I think he's actually using it. I think he is deliberate enough to be like, I can't acknowledge this. Like, this is the whole, if it's the same thing that Elida does, where she sends one of her trusted allies to go work on a farm and demotes her from Aes Sedai back down to accepted. It's the same where Rand is like, I have to kill my friend because he violated my laws. Don't fucking violate any of my laws. If I'll do this to my friend, think about what I'll do to you.
Well, technically, Shamaran was not Elida's friend. I think you're thinking of sending crap, what's her name? But anyway, she's not demoted. She's just sent to bumfuck Ebudar.
Oh, gotcha.
Shamaran was not her friend. Teslin, thank you, Super Skylake. Yeah, sending her friend to one of the least...
But Teslin was an ally, right? Teslin did...
Right. But she doesn't get demoted. She just gets given a really unfavorable assignment.
Which is the one that gets
Shamaran,
demoted?
The yellow.
And Shamaran was an ally, though, right?
Politically, yes, but not a friend. Teslin was actually a friend, because Teslin's a red.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I used friend a little too liberally there. I was thinking just political ally. Yes.
Yeah, political ally and friend are very different. Okay, so I'm being asked to justify why Rand doesn't need cognitive dissonance. He does need cognitive dissonance, but that doesn't mean it's not dissonant. Okay, tendencies. He makes bad choices to survive. Okay, I guess in fairness, this is basically the only male death that Rand puts on a pedestal on par with how he treats women's deaths. So I actually should be excited that Rand is so torn up about this rather than giving him a hard time. Because this is the kind of compartmentalization that Rand has to try to make himself make around women and death and stuff, because he doesn't normally... Well, he doesn't sentence people to death normally at all. And he doesn't have to deal with his friends dying very often. So the two together is pretty rare. I just wish that he could have learned more from this.
I don't think there's a lot to learn from this. I think that, this was a situation... It's about learning to be a leader. This is what being a leader is that sometimes you create laws, and even if your friends violate those laws, you have to enforce them, no matter how unpleasant that is. And I don't necessarily think whether or not you think he should be at the execution, I think is debatable. And I think that's a very personal thing for him.
Yeah, I guess, I'm not really thinking so much about the law part. I'm just thinking about how he walks away from Mangan's death and compartmentalizes it and can't do that with women's deaths. And I think that he should have taken this compartmentalization and learned to apply it to more than just Mangan. But the whole law...
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't think Mangan ever ends up on the list.
No, exactly. So if we're going to argue that he needs cognitive dissonance and compartmentalization, I wish he could have applied it to more than his drinking buddy. But I do see the legality factor of it. That part, he absolutely had to sentence Mangan to death. That's clear.
Well, and this is where, are we talking about a political ally or a friend? Because we did make that distinction, and Mangan was the first person to support him, but how good of friends were they?
Right. And that doesn't get to matter, right? It doesn't matter how good of friends they are. And that's, yeah, and I mean, in fairness, the women warriors are not the same thing as political allies that actively broke, or personal friends who actively broke his rules. But it's just, the fact that he never reflects on this death and never takes this lesson into other things he guilt trips himself about makes me feel like Mangan's entire storyline is a little bit of a wasted learning opportunity.
Yeah, I see it as Rand, basically another step on Rand hardening himself, becoming the Quendiar, like being able to walk away from his friend's death. Like, we see it as a necessity to rule, but also, like, that's painful. And, like, do you kind of want to be like, Rand, save Mangan? Like, come on, man. Like, he's your friend. He supported you. Like, he killed an asshole for being an asshole. Like,
yeah.
Make an exception to your rule. Like, you are basically God. No one would question it. Literally no one would question it.
Yeah.
It wouldn't undermine your rule, probably. You would just be like, yeah, this is my friend. I get to make exceptions. Like, that's how tempting is that? How much would that undermine him? How much of a difference would that make? How much would Mangan have continued to be an ally in the future?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, this is a powerful step in Rand's process. We don't see him repeat it. It's fair to give him this moment as a growth opportunity rather than as, why aren't you consistent before and after this? This is a transition decision, I guess.
But what I compare that to is Rand post Veins of Gold, because that's quote-unquote the ideal Rand.
Yeah.
And that Rand would have absolutely not killed Mangan.
Mm-hmm. Because that Rand would have been able to get past the political push-pull that Emperor Rand is struggling with right now.
He would have redeemed Mangan instead. And that to me is the disappointing part, is like, Mangan didn't need to die, Mangan needed to be redeemed.
Mangan needed to pay his toll. And there's many ways to do that, execution being only the most obvious.
But because the political expediency that Rand was trapped in, he didn't see a way out of it.
Yeah.
And basically, I think Mangan died because of Rand's lack of creativity.
Right. He picked the least G option to deal with that. Kind of like how at the end of the chapter, Avienda's like, well, I can kill myself for one toe or Rand for another toe, but they're mutually exclusive. Like, Rand faced a similar thing here, where, like, there's death level toe that has to get discharged, and then he picked an option that, technically worked, but not really.
Which I feel like brings us a lot back to Avienda, where she says killing Rand would solve one toe and killing myself would solve another.
Yeah,
where she's sort of struggling in a very similar manner and doesn't have the out of killing somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Rand is in that same situation, and he is able to pick a death to resolve it. Mm-hmm. But she can't. Which is good, because either of them dying would suck.
All right, past the Mangan stuff, Rand says, I'm leaving for Camelin immediately, which, again, he's only been there for, 24 hours at this point? Like, he's popping in and popping out right away.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, he didn't really this was him fleeing the bonding. This isn't him really here for any reason.
But he did show up long enough to make another impression on Solanda, the future head of Chafail.
Sure.
This is apparently a very scary moment for her, so 24 hours for him, but a life-changing moment for her.
What's her story?
Solanda is the one that Rand threatens with Saidine-enhanced swimming lessons in a prior chapter. And in this scene, she's standing behind Colivert, just absolutely terrified to be in the same room with Rand. And he kind of glances at her and keeps thinking he wishes he could reassure her that he bears her none of the same ill will. He points at Colivert. And she becomes one of the sword-wielding Maidens of the Sword and becomes the head of Chafael later.
Huh. That's a good detail I completely missed. That's Rand's Tavernus twisting the life of everyone around him.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, she shows up repeatedly in this scene just being, like, in the crucible of abject terror that we see Perrin reflects later. Like, she's already passed through the worst fear of her life. Like, this is one of the moments that encapsulates that moment in her life. Even though he's not pointed at her at all. Rand is in the same room with her, wishing that she wasn't so scared of him. But from her perspective, it's like, those 3 weeks were the worst of my life. And it ended with the time he just hung in a yeoman. Oh my god.
Rand is a hell of a catalyst for other people's lives. Yeah. We get a little bit of Barrett Lane here.
Talking with Avienda. Weird.
She asks about Perrin, and Matt, but mostly about Perrin. She still, remember, she swore revenge to get him from Fael, and she is not one to forget her vows.
Ogier's oath on it, girl.
Yep. And then here's a question. I was hoping to ask you about this. Avienda wants to go with him, and she says, I must consult with Baal on the business of the wise ones, she told him in a no-nonsense voice, then immediately shot a sharp look at Avienda, who had on such an innocent face that Rand knew she was hiding something. Avienda looked many things naturally, but never innocent. Never that innocent. What the hell is she why does she want to go to Camelin and talk to the wise ones?
She doesn't. It's an excuse to go bang her new husband.
Oh.
She really wants to go spend some time with Baal. And she's using the wise ones as a pretext to go have some time.
Thank you, Occam Fraser.
There's even a line later when Rand looks at Avienda and is like, well, like, aren't you going to go talk with Mullane and the wise ones? And she's like, Mullane would not like it if I interrupted now. It's definitely sex.
Thank you for pointing that out. No, now I'm like sitting here with my head in my hands just being like, oh yeah, that's super obvious. It's, yeah, when you're like, why are those two people hugging? Oh. Oh,
yeah,
gotcha.
Mullane and Bale's sexual tension is a hilarious, like, below tertiary level subplot to everything.
That whole, like, getting married. You know, one of the things that I always thought that interests me is I learned that Jordan actually had two girls he was dating at the same time. And so I'm wondering if maybe he wrote his whole relationship in as a subplot with Bale, that old relationship with Bale and these two women.
From what I've extrapolated, having read that interview and read the series and read the interview and read the series, I think that all of the Aiel relationships have bits and pieces of that. It's very much like what he modeled their entire version of polyamory off of, I think, which is why it's more male wish fulfillment weirdness than one might wish, while also still being functional in a strange way.
I mean, you could say that there should be more, like, first brothers.
Yeah, we should have brother husbands. That should be a thing.
Yeah. And the only thing I'll say about that is probably more, there is just this constant churn of dead men in this society that is not as common. Like, there are maidens, but they're definitely not as frequent.
Yeah, I just choose to headcanon that RJ didn't show us the entirety of Aiel society, and there are brother husbands.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I assume there are as well, but I do think that the reason that sister wives are so much more common is that the men are constantly killing each other.
I mean, and that's fair. It's an extremely warlike society. War dictates everything about their demographics and resource management.
And we do know that despite the maidens being a very large portion of Rand's forces, there are way more male warriors.
Right, it's like 1 to 10 or something stupid like that.
And so, of course, you're going to have way more men dying than women, the removing the women from the society, you know, all that kind of stuff. Like, the way we've seen something like that happen in China with the one-child policy.
Yeah.
Like, an imbalance in demographics leads to all sorts of weirdness.
And that's not even that big of an imbalance.
Marriage customs.
Like, really. It seems small when you look at it, and then it becomes very massive when you examine people's lives. It's very strange. Sure.
Well, there's a difference between percentages and actual numbers.
Right, because people don't come in partial portions. You can't have 0.4 of a person. It's not a thing.
Well, and also, like, a 0.1% seems small until you realize that, like, that 0.1% multiplied by 3 billion people is a very large number. Yeah. There's a lot of individuals who cannot find wives or whatever, you know, and the same is true of the Aiel. The Aiel are a large population, and some percentage of the males are killed during war, and some percentage of the women can't find the husband who's not already taken.
Right, and, like, you know, we don't see that many of the Aiel, right?
One of the other thing to notice, men who are warriors have no problems getting married. Women who are warriors have to drop the spear to get married. Have you noticed that little imbalance?
Yeah, I never really thought about it because it's so obvious and logical. But yeah, now that you say it out loud and I think about it with my critical brain, it's like, God damn it, people.
You know, and pregnancy is the big difference there. Like, it's hard to be a warrior. And
only one half of the species does the incubating human part. It's a thing.
Yeah. Although, as we know, Tigraine kind of went ahead and did it anyway.
Yeah. Was she, you know, because Jandwin couldn't say no to her, which is just... I have issues with anybody running around in battle at 9 months pregnant, unless you're Elaine and it's the last battle.
I mean, I have to assume that Rand was, premature and was like maybe 7 months, maybe even 6 months pregnant.
Yeah, that's fair that he would have been in the 3rd trimester, but not necessarily fully to term. And I mean, essentially Tigraine did the same thing as Elaine. She went into battle giving birth for the sake of the last battle. Like,
yeah, fair enough.
It's
Yeah.
There's, she is perhaps the one person who can claim the Elaine exemption, aside from Elaine.
But she did not have a prophecy.
Well, she kind of did. Gitara told her that she couldn't go home to Andor until she went to battle in front of Tarvalin or something like that. Like, she was following prophecy to get up to that moment. It's just Gitara didn't tell her the whole "you will be dead" at the end of this part.
Do we have the text of that prophecy?
We do if we Google real quick.
Let's go out to the kitchen. Let's go out to the kitchen and have ourselves a snack.
An Aes Sedai called Gitara Morosa, who had the foretelling, had told her that disaster would befall her land and her people, perhaps the world, unless she went to dwell among the maidens of the spear, telling no one of her going. She must become a maiden, and she could not return to her own land until the maidens had gone to Tar Valon. There we go. So, when she was facing the Aiel War, that was the first time the Aiel had crossed the Dragon Wall. That would have been the only way the maidens would have gone to Tar Valon, ever in the history of the Aiel. So she was just as forced by prophecy as Elaine, I think. Which, at the time she would have heard that, the maidens, the Aiel, they would never go to Tar Valon, right? So she was watching her life unfold and was like, oh shit, the Aiel are going to Tar Valon. There we go. So it's very much like Elaine's level of certainty based on prophecy.
Never put that together.
Yeah, me either, until I had to make this argument, but it works.
So Sulin basically tries to put him down in public at this point for trying to avoid the maidens. Well, first of all, we open a gateway and we go back to Camelin. Do you have anything before that?
Just him being really okay with Alana being miserable, because she crashes home in his head and she's crying and he's like, well, fuck you, bitch. And I'm like, yeah, Rand, you tell her.
Yeah, what is she crying about? He didn't love her enough?
I have no idea. I honestly don't get what all the crying is about. I get her crying for her warder that died, but she seems to cry in response to Rand not being nice to her, and I just don't follow.
Yeah, I really don't like that about her. I think she's emotionally unstable because of the bond with the warder, but the whole, like, Rand fled from me, so I'm gonna cry thing, really... And the thing is, she doesn't cry when... Super Skylake says she's crying because Rand's in constant pain. That would make sense if she cried because he was near and she could feel the pain and stopped crying when he left, but the opposite is true. Yeah,
I think in Farmadding she says, it's easier when I'm close to you, which, like, directly counters that. Ugh, yeah, I do not get it, and I just have very little patience for Alana's emotions at this point.
Clingy girlfriend turned up to, like, 11.
Yeah, it's like land fear is on par with you. That's how bad you are.
Right. Land fear, but, like, not smooth.
Yeah, crunchy land fear. But she did rape Rand, so kind of fuck her.
Yeah.
I'm not even sad for that F-bomb.
I want Rand's pain to have something to do with it, but it doesn't. I can't figure out a way to make that work.
It might be part of it. You know, Alana might be very much like, oh, now if you have cramps, right, and you're all emotional from your hormones, and then your fucking uterus decides it wants to rip itself out, it's like extra reasons to cry, right? Like, you were already there, but now you have more reasons.
Already, you realizing using the term in reference to periods doesn't really work for me.
Okay, so...
Because no, I don't know.
So imagine that one of your organs is a total fucking twat and decides to just punch you repeatedly from the inside. That's what you need to imagine. Just pick an organ and imagine that it's punching you. Done.
My brain does that sometimes.
Yeah, just move that down into your lower abdomen.
Take the emotional pounding and move it into more of a physical.
Yeah, take like heartache and diarrhea and combine them. That's about the sensation.
Heartache and diarrhea. I love
it's
that.
Not fun.
That's the best. That's the best description of a period I think I've ever heard. Is take a heartache and diarrhea and combine them. Beautiful. That's poetry, Olivia. That's bloody poetry.
Bloody. I see what you did there.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. You like that?
No, I hate it. Grumpy cat memes for days.
Like, no, I don't like periods. Why? What makes you think I like a period?
If it was easier to get the damn thing removed, I would. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, Jesus. No, I mean, one of the things, so TMI, probably, but my mother had all sorts of cysts on her uterus growing up. And so her monthly periods were miserable for the entire family. And it took a ridiculous amount of pain and cyst growth to convince the doctors that it should be pulled out. And frankly, the fact that it wasn't years, if not decades earlier, is disgusting to me when I think back on the way doctors treated my mother's health growing up, and how if her pain had just been taken seriously, my life would have been better.
Yay, sexism in medicine.
Right?
Yeah, women's pain not being taken seriously in medicine is... Oh, it's so many kinds of fucked up. TLDR, medicine is rude to women. It's rude to everyone, but especially those of us that have to deal with children. The making of. Anyhow, moving on. Sulan's being cranky at Rand. That's where we were left off.
And we got a bunch of references to Laya, who we know in a couple of chapters is going to be left in Shadow Logoth, so I think we're setting her up with some foreshadowing for that, giving her some characterization so that we feel something at her loss. Although that is a question I had for you. Laya's whole plotline, her loss in Shadow Logoth, her resurrection, her balefireness, and Samael's death is something that really just confuses me to like, because like, not from an events happen. I know exactly what happens. Why that sequence of events in these books? Samael's death is one of the most anticlimactic Forsaken deaths. Rand literally turns around and go to balefire his friend who is being tortured to prevent her life from ending in pain. And when he turns back, Samael's gone.
The only thing that reminds me of is how disappointing Fane's resolution in the last battle was.
But I feel like Fane's resolution was a disappointing mistake, where Samael's death is something he like planned and led up to and was like built up to in all these levels and wanted to sort of make you go, oh, he wasn't that big of a deal.
Both climaxes, or, ruined climaxes, so to speak, are the result of Mashadar, Eridhall, Shadow Logoth, the evil that is not the Dark One.
Chaotic
what the fuck is up with that?
Yeah.
Chaotic evil, I like it.
Versus lawful evil?
Yeah, because they both are very disappointing, very hollow, and I just, as I was sitting here listening to you, was like, they both have the third side of this whole thing in it. So I wonder if that's RJ not actually having weird, bizarre, lost plot lines, and it's actually some sort of like meta quantum physics duality breaking message or something.
This is so evil because it's just not satisfying. Like the endings it gives you, that's how it's evil. Is it's like it's not a good evil that you can defeat. It's just like it peters out.
Right, and Mashadar gets in there and ruins everybody's fun.
Yeah, including ours.
Right, like
nice
it takes away Rand's ability to kill Samael. Right, it takes away Samael, and it takes away Rand's ability to say, I killed Samael.
Right.
So it strikes this weird middle path where it's like everyone and everything can go fuck itself.
And it takes away the Dark One's ability to resurrect Samael.
Right, totally.
It ruins his fun, too. He's like, you took away my toy.
Yeah. So, like, Mashadar's just in there being the stick and the spokes for everybody's plans, and that's its entire goal in life.
Fuck Mashadar.
Oh, seriously. It's, yeah, I agree, Super Sky. Like, it's very much like it in Wrinkle in Time, when all the kids are doing the ball in perfect unison.
Wow, yeah.
That's definitely Mashadar and it are the same thing. I agree.
God, Wrinkle in Time, that's a hell of a reference.
Oof. I actually really liked the movie. I usually hate book to movie translations, and that one I honestly didn't totally hate.
Avienda pops up. Do you want to talk about the dreams and the prophecies she shares by the seashore? She shares from the wise ones.
Yes, because we rarely get prophecies that are not capital P prophecies, and this is one of the rare times, and that's fun.
Or from Perrin or Egwene or
the wise ones. The wise ones hardly ever tell us what they see. Of all the dreamers, the wise ones are the most tight-lipped.
And you think they'd know the most about what's going on.
Which is why they tell us the least, presumably.
Right. So Melanie and Bear dreamed of you on a boat with 3 women whose faces they could not see, and a scale tilting one way and then the other. And so we've seen the him on a boat with 3 women around him. That was actually, I think, when I did with either Alex or Super Skylake. And since you're both here, tell me which one of you I did that. That was definitely in one of those 2 chapters.
I want to say Super Skylake because that's one that got published.
Gotcha.
Because I listened to it. Yeah.
Ah, yes, it was a Nicola thing. Thank you. So yeah, with Super Skylake, we talked about how there was the 3 women, and I thought that was Rand on the boat when he's basically being burned. I think the scale is...
He doesn't get burned on a boat.
Okay, so I thought he did. I thought it was the whole Viking ceremony thing.
I think he gets burned on a pyre on land. I don't think it's on a boat. I think it's the metaphorical boat. I don't know. I figured it was more of a symbolic for the fact that like the 4 of them are in a relationship or something.
Or like the boat of death, maybe?
Or it's a representation for like how they're moving down through time, like a boat on a stream sort of thing.
I'm convinced that Jordan intended to have Rand's body burned on a boat.
It's very Viking.
Yeah.
But Ogre's agreeing with me that it happens on land.
That image is so, because of these prophecies and the Viking ceremony, it's so ingrained in my brain that I was convinced Rand was burned on a boat. Absolutely convinced.
I mean, it's only been in like most of the awesome fantasy TV shows and movies that you've ever seen.
So then my other question is, the scale sliding one way and then the other. What do you think that is?
I don't really know, because I feel like it indicates that Rand is still choosing which woman he loves the most, which is not canonically correct. Rand loves all of them equally. Mm-hmm. But I think it could represent the fact that Rand is working out that he loves all of them equally. Like, as he comes into proximity with each one, he's like, holy shit, I really love this woman. And then realizes that feeling doesn't go away as he looks at the next. And so it balances out in the end, and he's still in that process. But that feels very complicated and convoluted to me, so...
I'm going with Moradin's body and Rand's body, and he's trying to shift between the two. Or, oh, you know what? Ogier tendencies, that makes way more sense. It's just veins of gold versus the darkness.
So you're not seeing the scale as being related to the women, it's just alongside the women. It's not a 3-pointed scale, it's a 2-pointed scale.
Yes.
That definitely reduces the complexity of my explanation by orders of magnitude.
The scale of justice, where it's Lady Liberty who's blind, holding a scale with 2 sides.
Right, and his resolution on light versus dark is very related to his emotional bond to the 3 women. Maybe we can love again. Like, those concepts are very rolled together, right. So it makes sense that they be in the same dream from the Wise Ones.
In a lot of ways, the bonding of the 3 of them that creates the veins of gold is what balances the Lord of Chaos that creates the darkness in his mind.
I mean, that's what Lews Therin is hung up on, is what he did to his love.
Right? We just saw that dream.
I like this so much better than the bullshit I've been piecing together on the last several rereads.
And that's why we do the podcast.
Oh, thank you.
I know, right? Because like, there's so many times where I have a question, I'm like, I don't get what they're going at. And like, right here, like Rand shifting from darkness and then coming back to light and love. That was Ogier's line. I'm like, oh, obviously.
It's so obvious.
Right, yeah. Like, oh, thank you for... And so many things that are obvious to one person are completely obscure to somebody else.
Oh my god, seriously. But yeah, it's amazing how much another person's obvious is not obvious to you, and vice versa.
One man's treasure is another man's trash.
Oh, I keep thinking I've learned this lesson, and then I realize I have not yet learned this lesson.
And for me, a lot of times as I go through the podcast, one thing I found is sometimes I just say what's obvious to me, and I'm like, oh, well, this is what I obviously think. And some people, for like half the audience, or even like 9/10 of the audience, like, oh yeah, of course, that was obvious. And the other 1/10, like, oh, I never thought about that. And so I have made an effort to say things... Every once in a while I get people who are like, why do you say that? It's obvious. And I'm like, because it's not obvious to everybody.
Yeah, I have noticed that in many parts of my life, that sometimes I won't say things or suggest things or bring things up because I think it's so obvious. Mm-hmm. And then I do bring it up or bring up a parallel item and people look at me like I'm a fucking genius. Mm-hmm. just like, guys, that's like the most obvious thing, and yet apparently it's not. Like, there's just, we have our very strange silos in our own heads about what is logical.
We do.
Talk to other people is the TLDR. The
Right.
takeaway message is talk to other people.
Well, and also when you, and you are a very intelligent person, are, have confidence in your opinions. Your opinions are often correct because you are an intelligent person, and being confident of that is an important thing.
But then there's that Dunning-Kruger curve, right? Where it's like the more you know about things, the more you want to like make caveats and be like, I don't really know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I tell you, I know nothing about the Wheel of Time. I don't know why you people listen to me. I barely scratched the surface. Like, yeah, no, there's so many things that I'm just like, oh yeah, I don't know this at all. This chapter in particular is making me feel like I know nothing about the Wheel of Time. Like, there's so many names in this chapter that I'm just like, I guess that's a Kyrianan lord? There's a depth to these chapters and these books that is intimidating sometimes.
Yeah, all the better to go into it with an army at your back.
Right. No, and this is where I say, like, I don't feel like these books are written by a person. I feel like these books are written by a person watching real events and giving you a win. Like, there's so few inconsistencies in minor characters' motivations. It's just like, what or how?
Yeah.
I do believe that Robert Jordan is a rare genius. Like,
I would agree with that. He created something that existed independent of him, and he just got to peek into it and be like, hey, how's my like making like sourdough or kimchi or something. It's like, how's my culture doing? How have you developed in the 2 weeks since I last checked in?
I'm just gonna, it's growing without me.
Yeah.
And that's where, and I in no way ever want to badmouth Sanderson. But Sanderson wrote the final 3 books like an author.
Oh, yeah.
Jordan wrote the first 11 books like someone watching the real world go by.
Yeah. And I wonder, too, how much RJ, would not actually feel like he was writing the story from his own head. He set these characters up, and now he just has to write what they would do.
One of my favorite Harriet stories is when she talks about Jordan coming out of the room after writing Fane and kind of being a bit of an asshole. And her being like, were you writing Fane today? And being like, yeah. Like, cut it out.
I remember hearing that somewhere, and that just furthers my point. He was writing the story train that he got started, right? Mm-hmm. It was going, and he would grab a hold of it and hang on long enough to write some chapters and then have to jump off again and go back to his life. And it just keeps going.
He was never an outliner. He never, I mean, he knew where he was going, but he was not the same way. He didn't outline the same way Sanderson did. He didn't construct a story. He constructed characters and rode those characters to a finish.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why I kept expanding. It makes for very, very, very satisfying writing, but at the same time, it makes it very hard to end the series. And I do have to wonder if Jordan would have been able to end the series in 3 books, the way Sanderson did, or if it would have continued on.
Maybe, but only because he would have been so excited to get onto the Outriggers. Matt and Tuon and Trolloc Wars and all of that.
I wonder how big of a deal Outriggers is. I wonder if that's something that Jordan would have actually
Well, I read somewhere that he at least had the seed ideas for what the Outriggers would be sketched out. So I could see. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an RJ psychology expert, but I could see getting to the end of the series and then being excited to let that finish, so that way it's done and you can do the other stuff. I don't know. I like finishing my projects by moving on to the next project, so that's just me, I guess, and my bias coming through.
Small note from editing Seth in the future. Here I cut out about 15 minutes of talk about political subjects. You're welcome.
To quote Nicola Tree Hill, the future teeters on the edge of a blade. But not really, because that's been true for the entirety of my entire life. So, what's another disaster? It's just 2020.
Have I mentioned how hard this episode is going to be to edit?
I'm sorry. I suppose you could make me do it if you really run out of time.
Oh, well, I'll put that on John, because this was supposed to be a short chapter, and we're at an hour.
Yeah, you said 2 short chapters. We can do 2 chapters tonight.
In fairness, we haven't spent all that much time talking about the chapter.
Guilty as charged. Okay, we can do this before I go get another beer. We can finish this chapter. So we're talking about dreams.
So we're on the prophecies, yes. Melanie and Amis dreamed of a man standing by your side with a dagger to your throat, but you did not see him. Rand is convinced that is a gray man.
I'm convinced he's wrong.
I am convinced he's wrong.
That's Moradin. It's gotta be Moradin.
Absolutely. Well, do you think Moradin?
Yeah, because Rand's identity... Ooh, I was basing that argument on it being post-crossing the streams. But we are not. We are pre-crossing the streams.
No, we are pre-crossing the streams. Although it is a prophecy, so...
Yeah, I think it's Moradin because of the body swap and the identity crisis that the two of them go through. It wouldn't be as obvious as a gray man. What else could it be?
LTT, possibly, but he definitely sees LTT. I'm going to guess Moradin, because when he sees those faces merging together, he's convinced that's him merging with LTT.
Mm-hmm. Which, again, is like...
Not. It's him merging with Moradin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also like... Moradin is the architect of a lot of the plots against Rand. You know, he's the one playing both sides of the board against the middle kind of thing. So being the one with the knife to Rand's throat is very much like, I'm in control, right?
But it also, you know, one of the things I like about it is it's sort of Jordan being like, what do you think? You think one of his friends is a dark friend? Maybe. Possibly.
I mean, Davran Bashir literally stands at his side with a knife all the time. I mean, Davran tries to stab him one time just to prove a point. Like, there's many men.
I think Taim might be the more accurate... Actually, Taim is...
The Black Tower and Taim?
And yes. And the whole, like, recruiting and taking the people... and that's already happened. Oh my god, Taim is hitting me hard right now as the solution to this prophecy.
I like it. I like it. Taim is... He's helping. He's helping. He's also building... Yes.
The dagger is the corrupted Black Tower.
Mm-hmm. And you do not see him. Right.
You know, I'm loving this deep analysis of these prophecies, because I do feel like these have been sort of glossed over a little bit.
It's easy to agree with Rand about the simple explanations.
Right. Although I do think the Baron and me streaming of you cutting the wetlands in two with the sword is pretty easy to interpret.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty simple. It might be, like... more symbolic of farther out battles than the immediate one, but yeah, Rand chops a lot of lands in half or pieces with various weaponry.
Well, I was thinking his half is he gets one half and the Shan Chan get the other half, and that's where the prophecies say he splits the land in two with the sword. The prophecy is the east and the north must be as one, the west and the south must be as one, the two must be as one.
So this could be the two.
And this is the two.
Yeah, I agree with that, because the Shan Chan are the most profound, like, polarization of the military strength of the side of light. All the other divisions and rebellions are pretty meaningless and shake out, but the Shan Chan is, like, a pretty intractable other on the side of light.
I mean, they settle in. Like, they're not going anywhere. They become established, right? Like, the Treaty of the Dragon establishes their lands. Like, they take Almoth Plain, they take... Terabon, they take the Fingers of the Dragon, I guess, whatever the fuck that is, which we never hear about.
I wonder if what he cuts the wetlands into with the sword, I wonder if that sword is actually the dragon's piece, the document.
They do say he cuts the world in two. He cuts it in two with the sword of peace.
And slays his people with the sword of peace. Yeah, I think that the dragon's piece giving Shan Chan legitimacy in Randland's continent. That's got to be what this is, because that is a division that you don't resolve because the last battle is over. You know, that's a philosophical empire building difference that needs to get pushed through, not over.
Ogier, I was referring to not the Fingers of the Dragon in Tyr, but come on, load the Shadow Coast.
Oh yeah, that gets mentioned like once, right?
I don't even know if it's mentioned. I think it's just on the frickin' map. But it's a huge chunk of land.
I swear it gets mentioned once. Yeah, where is it again?
It's literally the southwest corner of Randland.
Oh yeah, that's totally insignificant. Let's never mention that once.
No, it's like the corner that everyone has to go around if you want to travel. If you want to take a boat along the coast and travel from, like, Ilion up to, say, Bandar Eben or Toman Head.
That is a really weird thing to...
But no one ever does that. It's like, it's almost not navigable because you have Windbiter's Finger sticking out from it, and it's like you have to go way the hell out to get around Windbiter's Finger. You almost have to go to Tremalking, and the only people who get out are the sea folk.
That makes sense. Kind of like trying to get around the southern tip of South America. It's just really hard.
Really hard, and there's a lot of storms and stuff out there. I mean, they do call the sea below tier the Sea of Storms.
Right, which I imagine is something like the Antarctic Current, because, the next thing farther south is the land of madmen, and we all know what that is.
Australia.
Yeah, the Antarctic Current, because there is no continent interrupting the current that goes around Antarctica, the southern side of Australia gets pounded with storms. There are some very interesting weather systems that you have to deal with if you want to sail from Australia to Antarctica.
I was looking at the geography of Randland. We had predominantly west-east wind currents like we do in the U.S. Almoth Plain and Terrebonne would be lush grasslands, and the two rivers would be a desert. Because the water wouldn't make it over the mountains of mist. That means that predominantly what you have to have is a south to north wind that's actually bringing most of the moisture up from the Sea of Storms into Ilion and Tyr and Almoth and Altara, and then up into the two rivers. Like, the moisture has to be coming up from the south.
So you're saying that Randland spins the other way? Oh, man. Climate zones on fantasy maps is a mess.
Not to mention that all the rivers, like there's a river that runs all the way from Malden in the Blight, south the entire continent to end at Ilion. So the entire continent has to have a elevation drop from north to south.
I never thought about that. RJ, what did you do to the planet?
He channeled it.
Seriously.
Anyway, I don't know enough about geography to really be sure about it, but I had a half an hour where I was like trying to figure out how the moisture got inland, and kind of went like, and second of all, there are no lakes in Randland.
Have you ever noticed that there's a really bizarre lake right next to the two rivers?
That's what got me, is there's one giant lake in the middle of the mountains. It's on the other side of the mountains than the two rivers. It is on the Almoth Plain side. But it is essentially the only lake in the entire continent.
Yeah, that
and it doesn't have a name. No one ever mentions it. It's essentially non-existent as far as we know.
Sorry, it's the weirdest random feature ever.
Other than the Shadow Coast?
Right, yeah, other than the Shadow Coast. Parish Swar? That name rings a bell. What is Parish Swar?
It's on the other side of the mountains from the Westwood.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, I got a map pulled up. Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, if we were going to get to the other chapter tonight, we would really be able to talk about with the retreat of humanity over the course of the last several thousand years. I think that this is probably one of those things where you can extrapolate what has been lost over the last 3,000 years based on these lost bits of geography. The things that just don't get mentioned in the story because it's been 1,500 years since anyone lived there or whatever.
The next thing I had was the prophecy about the Bowl of the Winds.
Yeah, me too.
All three had this dream, which makes it especially significant. Rain. That word still came clumsily, too. Coming from a bowl. There are snares and pitfalls around the bowl. If the right hand picks it up, they will find a treasure, perhaps as great as the bowl. If the wrong hands, the world is doomed. The key to finding the bowl is to find the one who is no longer.
I love that prophecy. The
it's
phrasing.
Such a great prophecy. And not that Rand does anything with it, but that is entirely the Supergirl's quest in Ebu Dar to find the Bowl of the Winds, and prophesizing Matt encountering Seattle Ann as the one who is no longer.
Seattle? Are you calling her Seattle? I love it.
How do you say her name?
Satala.
Seattle.
Sure.
Satala Ann. Seattle Anon. That's what we're going with.
Seattle Anon. Anonymous
That's
Seattle. Okay, we're done. We're done.
Yep. That's the demilitarized zone that they have there.
Yeah.
That's the one who was no longer. It used to be ruled by the United States, and now it is no longer. Seattle Anon.
I am so signing on to this headcanon. But who do you actually think is the one who is no longer? Because I have a zillion ideas for who that could be.
Oh, of course it's Satala Anon.
You think it's Satala?
Absolutely. No question in my mind whatsoever. Who else do you think it could be?
Brigida, Matt, and Noel all have important roles to play and complex identities. I like Satala the most, but I think there's a lot of people you could argue into that hole.
I mean, Noel is what? No longer what? No longer a hero of the Horn? He's definitely a hero of the Horn.
Well, he lost his honor. The whole, tell them Jane Farstrider died clean.
He's no longer Jane Farstrider. He's Charn.
Yeah,
You know,
he's no longer an honored member of the Valkyrie. He's no longer Jane Farstrider. He's some old man trying to redeem himself.
But in no way does he lead them to the bowl.
He's part of the party that goes to get it.
That's so weak.
He's part of keeping Matt from dying so that Matt can find the bowl. And Matt himself is full of...
Matt, I will buy more.
Because he's full of memories. He's died, and he's full of memories from people that don't exist anymore. So his knowledge, his skills in battle, those come from men who are no more.
But what I see Matt's luck points him at Satala Anon repeatedly.
Yeah.
It's not trying to point him at the Bowl of the Winds, it's pointing him at Satala Anon.
Finding the Wandering Woman is a matter of picking the nearest inn to the palace. When Nynaeve and Elaine say, we're going to stay in the palace, and he says, well, I'm going to stay over there. And he points, and it's the Wandering Woman. But yeah, the lightning thing. I mean, it's definitely random. In both cases, Matt finding this woman that leads in important directions is a random thing. It's just different random things. And then the only other one I had to say for the one who is no longer is Brigida, because she's been ripped out. But again, she's more of a supporting cast to keeping our heroes from dying while they get led via Zatala's connection to the kin. So I think you're super right. And the one person I didn't think of is the correct answer here. Because she's no longer Aes Sedai, and that's the most profound.
Did you not think of her?
No, I literally didn't. I was thinking about like multi-soul, multi-lifespan things. I was not thinking about a woman who'd been stilled.
All the wiki stuff totally agrees on that. Like, that's so... Like, especially when you get into, the books with her in it, like, she is very obviously the one who is no longer.
It was too obvious, okay? I was looking for something more subtle.
No, that to me is such... Well, that gets pounded over your head repeatedly in those chapters, like, later on. Yeah,
it's again, one of those things where I brushed over what's logical because...
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, it's super easy to miss. As we said, what's obvious to one person, I think we were talking about that earlier. To me, it's completely obvious that Satala Anon is the one who is no longer, to the point where I'll make jokes about it and be like... Right,
and I'm like, I have 3 other valid candidates. Excuse me.
Yeah, like, pretty sure it's Satala Anon.
No, yeah. I agree on the whole. I agree.
Although I do think Matt is a decent candidate.
He is key to finding the bowl, and he has all kinds of weird... stuff.
Being no longer something. Yeah. But at the same time, it's Talanon.
Yeah, for sure. Matt is the key to a lot. This is not a singularly Matt-based thing, where it is singularly Satala's wheelhouse.
And his luck points him at her. And then she walks the girls. Literally, she takes the girls to the kin know where the bowl is. She's the key.
Yeah. And it's extra appropriate because the reason she got stilled is because she was studying ter'angreal. So it's extra meta. She burned herself out. Sorry, I can get the words right. She was not stilled. She burned herself out.
And that's partially why it turns out she cannot be healed. Nynaeve does try and heal her, but the burning out is different than the stilling. One is a cutting, one is...
try to heal her? I thought that she resisted ever letting Nynaeve look at her.
It's in the companion.
Oh, okay. And I totally buy it. I mean, that makes sense with even how canon sets you up. I always thought it wouldn't work, but I never realized that she tried.
Yeah, it's one of those things where they try and she decides to go back to being an innkeeper rather than being a stilled Aes Sedai.
Cool. That's one of the things I miss for not reading the companion cover to cover. I only ever read entries.
Well, and I learned that today because I was looking at the wiki for Talanan, because she's the one who's no longer. So
gotcha.
That's very much reading the wiki for prep for tonight.
Nice.
This is one of my favorite quotes about Aviendha. Every minute around her was torture, but then every minute away from her was torture. Because Rand wants nothing more than to be in a relationship with her, but for various political and reasons of matters of point of this chapter, they cannot be together. And so it's torture to be near each other and not be together.
Unrequited love.
Oh, I know. Star-crossed lovers.
It hurts. It hurts so good.
It hurts so much. I'm going to cry for you. Also, hormones when you're 20.
Yeah, I do not envy all of the relationships just for that. Just for their ages. God.
And I love him being like, go, I know everything I need to know about IEO relationships. You really don't need to teach me. And that's totally an out for her to be like, yes, you do. I can leave now. And she's like, no, yeah. You know less than a boy of 6. And then she rattles off all these extremely obscure, extremely bullshit, barely related to anything.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I bet these are things that, like, people argue about. These are, like, the little things that you argue about on the side. Like, no one really has the answers to these.
This is
so
what the
no matter
Aiel
what-
rabbis are sitting around muttering over for years and years.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
she's like, you don't know all these things. And he's like, well, no, I don't. She's like, see, I have to stick around.
Right. But it's all because she's trying to meet her toe, which involves being around him in strange ways.
We sort of skipped over that. Do we want to talk? I guess that's the next POV, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and she says it right here in his POV. He can hear her whisper, "I will meet my toe." And it's like, you proud Aiel freaks.
And she says she has two toe. One to Rand, right, for him saving her life, and one to Elaine for sleeping with her man.
Yeah.
Without her permission. And killing Rand will solve the toe to Elaine.
Which is like, I don't feel like killing a woman's lover is the way to apologize for sleeping with said lover. I feel like that's the wrong way. But she's going to kill Rand over it? How does that help?
Yeah,
I feel like
maybe
Elaine's
not.
going to be doubly upset when Rand is both dead and a cheater.
Well, killing herself certainly meets the other one, which is
Right.
her betrayal of Elaine.
Yeah, I don't get how killing Rand is a logical choice for any of these scenarios. I feel like that's just...
I have to assume that, like, by eliminating him, that means that, like, he's no longer an issue.
Like, because you saved my life and I didn't want you to, I'm gonna kill you so you can't do it again?
Yeah, that's a good point. I've never really thought about that in detail.
Like, you saved my life so I will take yours? Like, what the fuck kind of gratitude is that? I don't get it. I genuinely don't get how killing Rand solves any of her toe issues. But she is, 19 and tangled up in...
Maybe just that she won't owe him for killing her?
Yeah, that
Or
just
for
seems
saving her?
like the
Yeah.
very low G option for getting out of that. Anyhow.
Silly Aiel logic.
Yeah, I could not be an Aiel. I am not that proud. We've got a really excellent Darth Rand / LTT sort of thing here at the end of his POV. He did not know who he loved, but he knew who he was going to save from whatever he could, but from him most of all. It's like, could you take your angst and dial it up a little farther? Because I'm not sure how angsty you are right now.
And that's in response to this LTT quote that I think we've heard before. What I love, I destroy. What I destroy, I love. We've heard that before when he sent away, I believe, Elaine. Or
Probably.
Avienda earlier.
That'd be
Yeah,
very
I can't remember
on par.
exactly when that quote occurred. But this is not the first time that LTT has said that. I remember talking about it before.
Yeah, and Rand's just like, you're an asshole, but also I completely agree, word for word. It's like, God, you guys are becoming real similar.
And that's Rand's biggest fear, as we saw in his dream, right? The fear of repeating LTT's mistakes. Sorry, Louis Theron's mistakes and killing the people he loves and going mad.
Watching a golden-haired woman's vision turn to horror, yeah.
And that's why he's literally driving away Avienda, because his nightmare is going insane and killing another golden-haired woman, which is Avienda.
Yeah, watching another woman's face turn from love to horror is like about peak things he doesn't want. He'd rather see the world burn than go through that again.
Exactly.
And then, yeah, that's the end of that POV. And we get a bit of Avienda being proud as a rooster. And Leah. This is the scene where we really get to see Leah's personality.
Yeah, this is Leah's personality from Avienda, where they sort of have a little interaction, and Avienda's sort of like a little out of place, and Leah's like, no, I get it. You're under stress. And gives her that little hook finger. Doesn't give her the hook finger to mock her.
Yeah, because they sort of spat, and it's in a very, like, it's in a very spear sister sort of way. And then, Leah's kind of calling her out, being like, you're not a spear sister. But, like, I'll still give you, like, the nudge, wink, wink of the fact that you were a spear sister, like, 6 months ago.
No, and Avienda's in this weird place where she doesn't technically have that much status, but, like, she will be a wise one, and she was a spear sister, even though now she's just a student. It's like someone who goes from, like, I think it was someone who's an electrician who goes to school for electrical engineering. But, like, while they're in school, they're just a student, even though they were a professional electrician and they will be an electrical engineer.
Yeah.
And, like, both of those things require a lot of... and so I can sort of see, like, some ribbing from some electrical engineer... from some other electricians being like, oh, you too good to, like, run some fucking wire?
Right.
Is that, like... like But at the same time, they're very respectful, and they're very happy that she's going on to do this thing, and they're proud of her as a representative of the maidens.
Yeah, Leah's not jealous or tearing her down. It's just like, her line here, "You are not yet wise, but no longer maiden." Like, you need to adjust, and I need to adjust, because the Spear Sisters have to adjust to her change in status. And this is just it's cute.
And I hear a lot of people frustrated with how slow her transition is from maiden to... But again, this is such a quick series. Like,
oh, yeah.
She goes from a Maiden of the Spear warrior to a wise one in, 2 years. Like, her entire apprenticeship. Like, most people can't even get through community college in 2 years. Much less, training for a wise one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's... The number of books is not consummate to the number of hours encompassed in those pages.
Right. As we're discovering in this chapter, where the detail is ridiculous, but it's like Rand walking down a hallway. And opening... It's literally, come on. There's it's him waking up, walking down a hallway, being like, I'm leaving, see you guys later, opening a gateway and walking through it.
Yeah.
This is a nothing chapter. We are...
hour 56.
Nearly 2 hours into recording, and it's a nothing chapter.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love this. I just want to laugh with Casson about how the maiden hand talk makes them glare at each other silently, and he's just watching all the interplay, like the tennis match, but he can't tell what they're saying because it's hand talk. I like laughing with him in that.
So this is my private rant that sign language should be taught in schools as a foreign language. It would be more useful than 99% of the foreign languages we are taught in school here in America. And it would help all the deaf people, and it would make for a much more accessible society if sign language, ASL, was taught in high schools as a foreign language.
I would agree with that. I got out of high school having missed 1 year of foreign language, so I had to take 2 terms in college, and I decided to take ASL instead of a spoken language. And it
awesome.
was a fascinating and wonderful process. I learned a shit ton about deaf culture and deaf history, and it was very fun feeling my brain expanding in plasticity in response to learning how to sign and how to think in the syntax of sign, because it's based on French syntax rather than English syntax. So the sentence structure is backwards from how I think for spoken words. So it was...
Were you taking ASL or ESL?
ASL.
Okay.
Yeah, I was taking ASL. But it was a really good brain expanding thing, and I still remember a couple of signs, and I've made sure to keep thank you. I try to do that with my hands whenever I say it to someone, just to keep that bilingualism going. And I watch for ASL translators at various events on various videos, and it's I think spoken language is useful, but thinking about disability access in addition to learning another language is even more useful, I think. So I super want to sign on to your idea that ASL should be required early on. It should be.
Because I can't tell you how much I'd love to do this podcast and also be on video signing it.
That would be super cool.
But I don't have that skill.
It's a hell of a skill. I watch people signing now whenever, Kate Brown does her press conferences, and she's always got a signer. When I graduated from OSU, there was a signer for that. And keeping up with watching them, I am just so impressed with ASL translators. Oh my God, translators are just any translator is a genius, but something about sign just blows my brain.
Have you seen the translators at concerts? Those are always fun.
Yeah.
So if you rap concerts and stuff like that, those videos got popular for a while.
My mom at one point did a performance where she had a signer and talking with the signer before and after about what it was like to translate her lyrics, and deaf people in the audience hearing the bass and seeing the words. It was, signers that do music and embody the art, right? Because they're dancing, essentially. They are a dancer on top of everything else. It's magical stuff.
Yeah, they're signing with their whole body on top of their arms and hands.
Yeah, I mean, they are the voice of who it is, right? The facial expression, the body language, everything about that carries more than just the word content. It carries the voice in a technical sense. One
of my favorite experiences is there's a conference of people, deaf people. I can't even remember what it was for, but I went there because my parents were there, and watching a woman deaf woman who was also nursing a baby signing while holding the baby. Like the sort of unconscious skill that goes into that like you and I of course talk with our mouths, and we can like talk around eating and talk around like doing all sorts of other things, and like in the same way she was just talking around nursing the baby, just like sort of had the hand that was sort of holding the baby would also kind of twitch, and then the other hand on top would be doing all sorts of things. And like, you know, and I asked somebody, you know, I was like, can you understand her? And she's like, you know, it's kind of like speaking with a slur, but yeah, it's not a, you know, it's not hard.
Yeah, same thing with like being left-handed, right? So I'm left-handed, and I got corrected a couple of times by my ASL teacher being like, are you sure you're signing with the right hand, with the correct hand? Because I, you know, as a left-handed person, I'm supposed to use my left hand, but she'd look at me and be like, well, you're just clearly confused about which hand to use. And I had to confirm, no, I'm left-handed. That's why I'm signing different from everybody else. And it makes it a little bit harder to learn to read people because everything's mirrored and you're learning everything from scratch. And it's...
Right.
Yeah,
you have to mirror everything that you're taught.
Yeah, so again, the sooner we get exposed to this stuff in life, the better for our ability to understand it.
No, and there's a controversy out there about teaching baby sign language. There's the idea that teaching baby sign language is going to impair vocal language ability. And yes, thank you for having the appropriate reaction to that statement, which is that's complete bullshit. And the earlier you teach people babies are able to learn sign language at a much younger age than they can actually articulate words, because articulating words is harder.
Oh, yeah.
And by teaching babies sign language, they actually get a head start on cognitive understanding and communication, and you're actually able to communicate with babies at a younger age, and like their frustration level lowers, their cognitive ability goes up. Like there's so many good benefits scientifically from teaching babies sign language before they can even hear.
That makes so much sense. Everyone should do that. I mean, like, I really want to get a good sign language rapport going with my warders, so that way...
And I shouldn't say before they can even hear, before they can speak.
Right.
Obviously, they can, they can hear at birth, right? Hopefully.
But yeah, it's like normal hearing people should also have ASL, because I don't know if anyone here has ever gone to, like, a concert where it's really loud and you can't hear for shit. Might be handy to have a couple of signs in your pocket that you can pull out and communicate across distance. Just saying. And
how awesome would it be to be able to, you know, talk to your friends across the room in school when the teacher is, like, looking at the board? Be able to be like, this fucking teacher sucks, and, like, be able to sign that to your friend.
So I went to Waldorf school, and we had this cool, stupid, dancey weirdness thing called Eurythmy, and we totally would use it to talk to each other behind our teachers' backs. It was like the most dorky, nerdy rebellion thing ever. We're totally figuring out how to swear in hippie interpretive dance behind our teachers' backs.
That's the most radio thing I've ever heard.
It wasn't just me. It wasn't just me. I remember in orchestra, we were seeing how many swear words we could get into the space between the teacher looking at us and not. For breakfast.
So what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Heart and Science by Ninkasi Brewing Company from Eugene.
What kind of beer is that?
That is a West Coast IPA, because that's helpful.
Oh, you mean just like all the other beers.
Yeah.
I am opening up Fort George City of Dreams Pale Ale. It's not an Imperial Pale Ale, just a Pale Ale. Not so much with the steam, but steam. Sizzle? No.
Click? I don't know.
What word am I looking for?
The hiss? Decompression? And before that, I was drinking Bubble Stash, which is an IPA, an India Pale Ale. Not an Imperial Pale Ale, an India Pale Ale, because those are the same thing.
Those actually are different things.
Really?
India Pale Ale refers to the hop level. Imperial refers to the alcohol level. So an Imperial IPA is generally above 7%, whereas a India Pale Ale is a very hoppy beer.
I did not know that distinction. I always just go with the hops as what makes the I in IPA.
Well, it's always an IPA, but if you have an Imperial IPA or an Imperial Pale Ale, I guess you could have an Imperial Pale Ale.
I don't see why not.
I'm not sure I know of any of those. But technically it is a category. It's just a very high alcohol pale ale without the bitterness.
Bitter, bitter, bitter beer. I am an IPA aficionado. I love hops. I love the bitterness. I'm one of the people that drives the market in very unfortunate directions, and I'm not sorry.
Well, fuck you. Well, I'm a sour person. So. Oh, by the way, I got an email telling me to cut out the fucking cursing. So
I saw that email as well, and I felt like womp womp. I swear so much I genuinely forget that I do it, and then like I was on a call for my stepmom's parents' like 50th wedding anniversary or something, and a bunch of very conservative Southern California people, and my brother texts me in the middle of it and is like, you just dropped the biggest F-bomb without even blinking. I genuinely didn't remember saying it at all.
Unfortunately, it is part of language, and actually, Patrick was the one who was always much more careful about that than I was. He would always remind me that I'm cursing. So you and I together are definitely
yeah. Like I can try, but
amping up the F-bombs. Yeah, I know. I'll try and keep it in mind. I know that not everybody appreciates the cursing, but
I mean, I need to practice more. Like I'm going extra feral and like losing all of my ability to code switch to be appropriate. So like it would be a good exercise.
If I just wasn't so angry at the world, it wouldn't be so hard.
The word just is in my vocabulary. It's like. I'm sorry, I'm a foul-mouthed millennial. I just say like fucking shit.
I can
all the
also
time.
do more editing and cut it out. Because for the most part, like if you cut fuck out of a sentence, like the whole sentence completely is just intact. Like it doesn't make any difference with the editing. So, can I do it every second sentence then?
Your tendencies is going to be naive to art Uno.
Does this mean I have to count sentences because I have to say a fuck every other sentence? Which means that this is a sentence where I can't say it, but this sentence is one where I can say
What if
fuck.
it's one of the sentences where you kind of like drop off at the end and then start on a different thought? Is that one or two sentences?
That's a good question. I don't fucking know. This is like when someone was really annoyed when I said moist and I just went off on it.
Oh,
was it moist or was it?
It was moist, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember.
Pus. That's right. It was pus.
Yeah, and then you just went off for like
Yeah.
ever. It was awful. It was so awful.
I have learned something recently about myself. I don't like it when people tell me what to do.
Really? You've
I
just
don't
figured this
react
out?
well to that.
Dude.
Let me rephrase this. It has been reiterated to me recently that I do not appreciate it when people stick their nose in what I consider to be my business and tell me how to run it.
Yeah, what is
We had a downstairs neighbor who was being particularly ornery. Not even to me, to my next door neighbor, who I know is just like totally silent and being like, you walk too loud and stuff like that. And it's like, you live in a fucking apartment building. You're outside my door while I'm trying to record, screeching super loud, and you're the only one causing any disturbance right now. And I went out there and got a little heated about it. When I probably didn't have a right to, because she kind of stuck her nose in my business.
Take your nose out of our coats, you summer ham.
Yeah.
Sorry, wrong book. We're not there yet.
What is that?
That's a curse that Elaine hurls to Lan's shock. So it must be, I believe, when they're dealing with the Bowl of the Winds, with the kin. Lan is looking at her like, girl, do you even know what you are saying right now?
Wow, the summer ham thing went right over my head.
Yeah, I have no idea what it means, but it's one of the few moments where Lan actually, like, raises his eyebrow, like, visibly. So, yeah.
No, that's like him reacting with a gasp and a hand over his mouth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it always has stuck out to me because it's so random, and all you know to gauge the severity is Lan's reaction.
This is where I really kind of enjoy Matt and Elaine's little playful relationship.
They're so fun.
I think I've said before, for a while I shipped the two of them. Like, Matt with a bloody noble, like, always kind of entertaining.
Mm-hmm. They settle out well as siblings, basically.
Yes.
They're very sibling-like.
Yeah, I guess that's probably the better analogy, yeah.
No, I mean, it's easy to see them, to ship them at the beginning when you're first going through it, but I like that their relationship does settle down into a teasingly antagonistic but fundamentally loving sibling-like relationship.
Yeah. And I have to assume that Matt's letter to her was deliberately mocking rather than him actually not being able to spell.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. That's when you're texting someone really fast and you keep hitting the S instead of the A, but you're too lazy to go back and correct it. It's that kind of spelling. I've been doing that so much lately and then getting mad and I have to edit my Discord messages. Like, I know that you all know that I meant that, not this, but I can't stand reading this.
Can I say one of my favorite things about Discord is the ability to edit messages?
Oh my god.
Like, the number of times I've sent something on Twitter where I'm like, oh, I just want to, like, edit that. I just don't want to change the spelling of a name or an to a an or the other way around.
Right,
like,
correct the spelling of
just let me make
to.
an edit.
Yeah. I love Discord's ability to edit, and I get so mad with the fact that... Because, like, Facebook lets you edit, too, and then Twitter doesn't, and I'm like, And Instagram doesn't either. I'm used to that button being there.
I'm going to get why it's there, because you don't want to be able to be like, have someone say, yeah, that's great, and change a message to be like, Hitler's wonderful, you know, or something
Fair, but yeah, Discord is superior for many reasons, not least of which is editing. But it's also not public, which makes it way less weird to potentially have editing skills, right?
Yeah, you can kick people off. Like, I can't kick people off of Twitter. I can block them, but they're still on Twitter.
Yeah, I definitely have been... I watched The Social Dilemma last night, and that is a fascinating movie. Like, I wasn't really shocked by anything in it, because, like, duh. Like, have none of you ever heard of cynicism or Orwell? Like, come on.
Did you see N.K. Jemison's reaction to it?
I don't think so.
She posted about 3 days ago, saying she tried to watch it, and she bounced right off the white privilege.
Oh, God. It's so much white privilege. So much colonial peoples are the only peoples. Oh, God. Yeah, that was intense. For sure. That was really obvious. But it was nonetheless reiterating to me how much I love Discord, because the entire model of why we are on Discord and how we interact and who is in our circles is a totally different model than all the other social media out there. And it's just like, yeah, I love this platform for reasons backed up by science. That video was, there was very few non-white people anywhere in it.
Well, there's very few non-white people on Facebook, which explains a lot of what goes on there.
Mood. And they didn't even talk about it. You know, they didn't even address. And, like, that was another thing, is they kept conflagrating coordination with radicalization. Like, as though getting angry about racial injustice across the country is on par with joining up with ISIS. Like, they created no distinction between coordination and becoming radicalized, and that was very disturbing to me.
Well, welcome to the cult of farm.
Yeah, welcome to the cult of farm. All it requires a tattoo, some cookies, and your soul. It's fine.
Tattoo's optional.
No, it's not.
Well, I don't have one.
Yeah,
Do I
but
not count?
yet. You have one in the future.
I'm not, well, because I'm never going to get a tattoo on my own. I'm not going to just go get one.
Yeah, I still need to get the other half of my ravens done. I only got one raven. I want both, but I only got one deliberately so I can go hopefully get the other one done in company with my fellow farmers.
You need a tower.
Ooh, I really honestly want to get the dragon and sword, like, collar pins, but I really don't know if I want to tattoo on my collarbones because, ow, I know that's going to hurt, like, my finger tattoo, and ooh, my wedding ring, longest 15 minutes of my life. God damn, that hurt.
Yeah, and I would say normally I wouldn't commit to getting tattoos. I don't have any tattoos, but at this point, like, farm is 3.5 years of my life, and probably going into at least another 3.5, if not more. So the idea, like, okay, yeah, that's a huge chunk of my life, and this has been no matter what happens in the rest of my life, this will have been one of the most important things that ever happened to me, I think.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I got my big calf piece with, like, words and everything. I never thought I would get a tattoo with words, but I was like, well, Wheel of Time has changed my life approximately a bazillion times in a zillion ways. That will never change. My entire life trajectory has been shaped by it, so...
And that's continued even after you got the tattoo.
Oh, yeah. I got the tattoo before I met you guys. So now I have a tattoo for you guys specifically. I have 2 Wheel of Time tattoos now. So
and that's the other thing is when people get a tattoo for something you've done, it's like, I guess I should probably get a tattoo for that. Like, I guess that is kind of my thing. And you guys have that tattoo, but
Yeah, we're
I can imagine it's a little bit like a celebrity seeing someone's like face tattooed on them. Just be like, oh, okay.
Oh god, that'd be so weird.
That would be very weird.
Nerdy Kitty, you can't draw, but your artist can. That is the point of a tattoo artist, is you take your vision to them and you hand them the pieces, and they do the magic.
So what I figured out how to do with the art for the cover art and as well for like various things is clip art is a great way to convey what you want. Mm-hmm. So if you can just find sort of, hey, I want an eagle here and sort of clip it out and like stretch it to the right size, and I want like a snake here and basically they're placeholders, and then you tell your tattoo artist what you want them to look like.
Yeah.
And they can then take that sort of reference plus your description and turn that into a sketch. And then you guys can talk about the sketch, and then the sketch ends up on your skin.
Yeah, it's a genuinely magical piece of alchemy that the tattoo artist's brain can do to make that happen. Like, you just have to trust them. That's why they're tattoo artists. And they'll do it in marker first, so you get to see it.
And it's also why you get a good tattoo artist first.
Yes, very important to get a tattoo artist with a whole selection of photos of prior art that you can really get excited about. That is absolutely a prerequisite. But yeah, my artist totally did not... She's never read this series. I bought her Eye of the World, but, you know, I have no expectation she'll ever read it. But she pulled off a beautiful piece just because of all the arm waving I did while we were looking at pictures of grape leaves, you know?
Well, and going down to Georgia and getting a Wheel of Time tattoo from the guy who did...
yeah, Red Ocean Tattoo.
Red Ash... Oh my god, going back to Red Ocean Tattoo is a dream of mine.
I would get a tattoo there just to be like, at the shop. Because, oh my god, that one piece, that's this full sleeve, right? The entire sleeve of the fan art. Oh god, that's a beautiful tattoo. I showed that to my artist while we were getting ready one time. Just like, admire this thing. And she was impressed.
I think no matter whether you care about the series or not, it's an impressive tattoo.
Yeah. And very well done.
And very, very well done. And then, you know, it looks like someone took some of the art that is out there and, like, painted it on his arm.
Yeah.
And then blend it together in, like, an amazing, really incredible way.
And, like, putting two-dimensional art onto a three-dimensional surface is challenging, even when the three-dimensional surface isn't, like, slidey and muscular-y and all of the things that humans are, right? Like, there's a whole art to translating the curves of the art to the curves of your muscles and how your arm changes. And then the color. And, oh, God, the color.
The color on that tattoo is really what impresses me the most.
Vibrant.
So good. Years later.
Yeah. That's peak Wheel of Time tattoos. Like, I love my tattoo and I think it's top shelf, but that one definitely is the undisputed champion.
Right, yeah. No, you're like, hey, I've got a good, you know, I'm in good shape, and then Schwarzenegger walks by and you're like, okay, yeah. I'm in okay shape.
I'll put my piece in the top, like, 10, 15 of the ones I've seen on Instagram, but that one is undisputed number one.
Well, the nice thing about tattoos, too, is they can either be covered or in an extreme removed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my artist has some that she's been working on getting taken off. Mm-hmm. And she's, you know, told me quite frankly that, yeah, it hurts as much or more than getting tattooed. But
I would assume more, yeah.
Yeah, it depends, you know. Where it hurts is just really, it changes. So I love getting tattooed, but it's a whole thing for sure.
Yeah. I think tattoo removal is such a cool process. Mm-hmm. They laser the ink to break it up into small particles that your cells can carry away. Brilliant.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, we have now procrastinated a long time before starting recording and even longer after starting recording.
Okay, so... 7:14. We got this.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?